When we call a function with input values, we are passing either a primitive or object to the function. When we pass values around in Java, for example as an argument of a method, a copy of the value gets created. This is why Java is pass by value. It means that copies get created when the values get passed around. For both primitives and objects, Java is pass by value. When we send in a primitive, we are not sending in the actual primitive, but a copy. When we send in an object, we are sending a copy of the reference. This has different implications for objects and primitives though. The original primitives can't be altered from within the methods, because primitives can't be altered, but the object can be. Let's look at an example in IntelliJ. We have a main method, and in this main method we call another method on line 8. And we're passing in two values, one primitive integer and one object person. If Java would not be passed by value, it would actually also alter the value of the int I on line 5. But let me prove to you that that doesn't happen. So I'm going to say, let's print I, let's do a space, and then just print the name of P. So remember, copies are being sent in. And these copies would mean that I is not changing. There's also a copy of the reference sent, but there is something funky happening over there. As you can see, the value of I is still 3. A copy was sent, sure. But also a copy of the reference was sent. But as I already mentioned, this is the same yet different for objects. Objects are also passed by value, but that means that a copy gets made of the reference before passing it to the method, but not a copy of the object itself, a copy of the reference. So both the original reference, the one on line 6, and the one that's being used as the input parameter, so it's sent in on line 8, and the input parameter list is on line 12, both of these are pointing to the same object on the heap. So if in that method we use the copied reference to alter the object, we alter the actual object, copy of the reference or not. If I ask the original reference, what is the value of the property of the number, it will be the same as I set it on line 5, a copy was sent in. But if I ask what is the value of this property, it's the same object that was being altered. So the name is being changed for the main method as well. So yes, objects are also passed by value, but the side effects are different. To be sure that you understand it, I've illustrated the steps. So as you can see, on this stack, we have a method main. And this method main holds an example object. On the example object, there's a primitive number and it holds the value 2. Then we're going to call another method from the main, and this method is going to add 1 to the number on the example object. So both the main and the add 1 hold a value that is pointing to the same reference on the heap. So then, when number gets updated to 3, as you can see, both the add 1 and the main have the example pointing to the very same object with the altered number. So after the add 1 is done executing, in the main method, when we go ahead and ask, hey, what's the value of number? It's going to be 3, because we're looking at the very same reference. I know from experience that this is a very difficult topic for beginners, so I'd also like to add a non-code example to explain this copied reference story. Let's picture a locker. If you and your friend have a key to the very same locker, you both have different keys that open the same locker. If one of you alters the locker or the content of the locker, the other one will also see the changes when they access the locker. Alright, so we have seen that Java is passed by value, meaning that it makes copies of the values it sends as arguments. But since primitives are just the values, the copied value doesn't affect the original primitive. This is different for objects. A copy of the reference gets made, so this will affect the actual object that the original reference is looking at.